A native New Yorker, Amy is a multifaceted performer specialising in dance, aerial and choreography. After 10 years of strict classic ballet training, she went on to pursue a BFA in dance and urban design architecture. After performing for 8 years in New York City and a year in Circus School, she joined the teaching facility at Frequent Flyers Aerial Dance in Boulder. Today, she continues to perform in New York City whilst training other inspiring athletes. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Look, for those of us like myself who aren't in the know, can you give us a bit of a background about what it's like to be an aerial dancer and what the, lifestyle's like? Who are these people and what do you all do?
It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff. So I guess it's dependent upon how you attack your performing career. I'm a freelancer, so when I get hired, I'll work for many different people in many different capacities. It could be events, production shows, and just like a variety of things, nightlife. In order to do this, you really need to have a thick skin. It's very, it tests you as a human, right? It's a lot of training. It's very intense. You have to always keep up with what's going on, your body, make sure that you're able to perform, able to train up on the newest skill set. You can always learn. So it's challenging. I would say it's a very challenging lifestyle.
And how competitive is it?
It's very competitive. It's a small community in comparison to many other industries. And there are a lot of people going for the same work, usually. Mostly women, I would say, in the arts. More so dance for females than males. But acrobats, it's a little bit more mixed, I would say. Yes, it's extremely competitive.
Okay, so is it competitive on a competition basis or in terms of getting a performance?
I think in terms of getting a contract, there are many competitions like festivals and circ festivals. That's also very competitive. You have to be at the top of your game, at the top of your industry and field to even compete. And then when you are in those circumstances, you get recognized by multiple people, producers, sort of top in the field, I suppose, for that. So you can either compete or perform in companies, in traveling circuses. There's a lot of opportunity. You just have to know how to navigate that and look for it.
So you said you've got a variety of different type of work. What's an example? Like, tell us a few different sorts of things that you may get freelanced out to do.
Especially in New York City, nightlife is the thing. Burlesque venues particularly. So like a year ago, I had worked at Webster Hall, which is an infamous music venue in New York, which actually closed recently. But there was a party that they were hiring aerialists for entertainment, so that you were part of both the atmosphere and kind of worked with the DJ who they had headlining at the space. So yeah, that's kind of one very good example of New York's performing base. But then there are also lots of, I would say, physical theater is another huge thing here, or immersive theater, where stories are told in a very specific setting and audience moves around the space with the performers. That's very big now, not just here, but like around the world, I would say. So I guess that's a good example.
So what is a day in the life of a I guess trapeze / dancer look like? I mean, how much training do you do? Do you have to do another job as well? How does it all work?
Well, I think it just depends on who you are, but in New York City, anywhere that you're living that's expensive in a city particularly, it's really hard to maintain a life as just a freelance artist. So I'm a personal trainer, and I work in fitness around my training. And I find that to be very valuable just because it's a physical art form that you need to be in shape for. So being a trainer and being in that environment is good. you have to train all the time. You have to maintain. It's something that, you take a week off and you lose your ability to do something that you last week drilled a million times. And you need to know that you can get a certain skill, I want to say 10 times before it's performance ready, accurately and efficiently. So it's intense. And there are circus spaces that are open from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. and people will work in their training around their jobs. So let's say I work, at 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., then I'll go 9:30 or 10 a.m. to probably 1 maybe, then go back to my job or just kind of go about my day. So a lot of people operate like that, or they'll be in the service industry. I'd say that's another popular thing. So working in restaurants. And then they'll be training in the morning and then going to work at night. But if you make connections and you network, it's possible that you can be performing pretty regularly and maintain a life. I would say it's harder in New York City or anything.
More competition.
Yeah, that and just the expense of living here. But yes, the caliber of talent, just the accessibility of people is just bigger here.
So how many hours a day or a week would you need to train?
I'd say like 3 to 4 hours a day, probably 5 to 6 days a week.
Right. And what would that training look like in terms of, I guess, like practicing on the trapeze versus dancing versus, in your case, say strength and conditioning?
It's definitely different as an aerialist than when I was training as a dancer. So that it's different. Because my background, specifically, I had been trained as a dancer as a child. So this, being an acrobat or an aerialist is newer to me. I've been doing it for about 6 years. And that is really extreme. You have to be in great physical shape. Not that you don't for dance, but it's different. Upper body, total body, as opposed to like mostly legs when you're a dancer. But I've developed the strength, muscle memory, coordination, and ability for a very long time. So that's something that I was able to maintain without necessarily taking hours and hours of classes a day as a dancer. But as an acrobat, you go into the space, you warm up, you particularly warm up in a way where intrinsic, core strengthening and kind of warming up the muscles around the joint, particularly shoulders, wrists, head, chest, and abs, just to kind of get yourself ready. It's much more intense, like powerful bursts of energy, I would say, and strength, just depending on what you choose to do. I do trapeze and Chinese pole and duo aerial. So I partner somebody. And that is extremely challenging for me in the sense that when I pick up somebody or another person's body weight that's close to mine, I really need lots of rest in between. So we'll warm up, we'll do specific warm up on the ground and then warm up on the apparatus, depending on whether it's like a conditioning day or choreography, whatever it is we're working on. You need a certain level of probably like an hour or two of warming up just to kind of get ready enough to do that. I guess it just depends on your time, your time limit. But you're doing a lot of exercising or a lot of exercises to, like I said, warm up intrinsic muscles just around the abdominals and shoulder joints, neck, wrists, and everything to just even climb and hold on. But I do something called horizontal apparatus, so bar, metal. Other people, so trapeze would be an example, a lyra, which is the aerial hoop, a pole, it's metal, it's also vertical, but that's another story. Anyway, there are other apparatus, so vertical apparatus, which are the aerial silks or fabric, which are probably more recognizable to most people. Like I say, think Cirque du Soleil. Aerial rope, which is just like it sounds, it's just a piece of rope. And those are vertical. So those are soft apparatus. And in that case, you usually wrap those around you to hold your weight as opposed to you holding your weight on something metal. So my choices are just, I think you sort of gravitate towards one or the other usually. And I really just like the feel of having something like solid It is. And I think that has to do with my dance background because I like the solidity of the floor. So when I'm on the trapeze, I'm like, oh, I can sit on something or I can stand on something, as opposed to silks where you have to wrap it around your body and then you can stay. You know? So it definitely takes a lot of work, strength, both physically and mentally, I would say, to keep doing, because it hurts. I would say circus hurts.
Hurts physically.
Yeah. It's something you need to get used to. Because you get bruised, you get burned. I mean, you fall. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it behind the scenes that I feel like people don't usually see. They see you in performance and you're usually on it. But not so much in the training space, because that's, it's your safe space. It's where you're able to really, kind of just do it without inhibition, I guess. And that's what I'm saying about like show ready. You need to know that you have something down well in order to take it into a performance setting.
So you always need to be on your game, I guess, because you don't know when your next freelance might come up.
Yeah, those things come up last minute. Unless you're in a full-time contract or like a part-time, you could get something like a 3-month contract at a theme park or something like that over the summer, where you're performing every single day in a show and you need to rest, recover, and rehabilitate for that circumstance. But if you're freelancing, while having another career, it's a little bit of a different lifestyle or feel.
But even just on a daily basis, you must get quite fatigued if you're doing 4 hours of training a day, plus you then doing personal training, which is quite physically and mentally demanding as well. Mm-hmm. Do you find that you get fatigued? How do you recover? What are your secrets around?
That's so training 4 hours a day as a circus performer is something that I personally have found to be exhausting to a level of overtraining. Coming from a fitness perspective, what works for me really is higher volume on a smaller amount of days. And with a lifestyle where you're living in New York or you're living in a big city and you have to have another job, it's next to impossible to be able to train that regularly. I would say that you might train that way if you were, like I said, on a contract or getting ready to be in a show or something like that. But my tricks are to eat well, drink a lot of water, and sleep when I can. And try to maintain a schedule that's livable and doable in order to have two lifestyles.
I'm fascinated to find out a bit about your background. Like, so as a child, how did you grow up? How did you even get into dance, which then transformed into trapeze and Chinese pole?
All that stuff. Yeah, a lot of things. I grew up in a family of artists. My parents are both doctors, but they have artistic backgrounds. My mom used to dance when she was a kid, and my dad plays a lot of instruments, and he sings and he paints. He does a lot of stuff. So they're really encouraging of our artistic pursuits. And so I am the youngest of 5. And I kind of followed in their footsteps with dance, musical theater, instrument and music, and so a lot of stuff. But I started with dance when I was very young in a variety of styles like jazz, hip hop, tap, and ballet. And then as I got older, I really wanted to focus a little bit more. And I would say about like 9 or 10, I started to just kind of choose ballet as my focus. And from there, I've trained pretty regularly, almost every day after school, on the weekends, and over the summer. So that's a huge thing. I would go to ballet summer intensives or dance camp, if you want, from like the age of 10 to when I graduated high school. Every summer, 6 weeks to 8 weeks of training in different places all over the country, so that I'd get a different variety of training from my background. But as far as the particular technique, ballet, I trained Russian or Vaganova technique, and it's very strict. And it has its rigidity, but also it kind of makes you into this powerhouse of an athlete. And at the time, or maybe even now, I don't really consider myself an athlete as much as I do an artist. But you have to have strength, endurance, and power. But it didn't connect to me until later in life when I started doing more fitness stuff. How strong I actually was, it just kind of took me by surprise, oddly. But yeah, so from like 10 until 18, I was dancing almost every single day on the weekends and in the summer. And my parents were very supportive of that, and my siblings also, because they were doing something similar. And then that sort of led into my going to NYU, which is for dance. My sister also went, and just taking it in more of a serious direction. I think I honestly didn't know if there was anything else, or didn't want to do anything else. Like, this is what I knew, and this is who I am, and this is who I was and so it's kind of like breathing to me. Eating,
so from a young age, you always wanted to be a performer?
Yeah, that's what I was, and that's what I was doing, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't start thinking about choreography till later, maybe in my mid-20s. It wasn't something that was I felt accessible, or just not something that I really delved into because ballet is very traditional and classic. So you would learn choreography from like forever ago. Yeah, everything that you learn in classical ballets is exactly the same choreography, usually, depending on the technique and who you learn from. But so it's a little rigid in that way. But then I went to NYU, which is modern dance, and then I started kind of open my eyes up to other things. Other types of choreographers, other ways of moving with your technique. So ballet is particularly upright, and you're trying to stay balanced and always kind of in this one plane of motion. Then you do modern dance or contemporary dance, and all of a sudden you're taking that technique and you're throwing your body around and you're rolling the floor and you're kind of almost letting go in a way, but you still need to maintain that ability. So that's a little bit different. And then that showed me kind of what else I was capable of. Yeah.
And then how did you transition into trapeze?
So that, it started a little tragically, but I hurt myself. I dislocated my left ankle in an accident. Let's say a gymnastics accident, because earlier in this time, like my mid-20s, I was looking for something else, because as I was saying, ballet is particularly rigid. And if you as a kid, they're encouraging to a certain extent, but if you're not the right fit, not the right shape particularly, you're never going to make it. And that is just the standard of the industry, unfortunately. You can be good at what you do, but if you don't look the part, you're not going to get hired. So that is what happened to me. I'm muscular and have a different physique, and I'm strong and powerful. And that didn't translate necessarily to classical ballet, where they like sort of long, lean physique. And so I was looking for other things. I was really curious and interested in what maybe I was meant to do instead of what I was doing. And that kind of led me to gymnastics. I was like, I had taken a couple of classes and I'm so powerful. I started to do things easily without training. I mean, without intensive training like I had as a dancer. So it was kind of like really overwhelming and exciting. I was like, maybe this is a direction I need to be going in. And got a little overzealous with that, and ended up hurting myself pretty badly. Had 3 ankle surgeries, including metal plate, several screws. And then after about a year of recovery from that, I could have danced again, but I danced on point, and that was just never going to happen with my range of motion was kind of destroyed from that. But it didn't matter because I didn't want it. I know I didn't want it, and that was the reason I had looked for something else. And I was, this is odd, but I was training at a personal training gym in the east side of Manhattan, and there were some aerial fabric in there and a trapeze in just like a regular, gym with cardio equipment and free weights. And I saw someone training on it. I was like, that is really interesting. It's like dance, but it's in the air. Maybe I should look into something like that. And I did. I talked to them, or one guy in particular who became my coach for the next couple of years. And he was like, he kind of drilled the strength into me because it was very different. I was very sore for the first year I was doing this because I had zero upper body strength. I could barely do one push-up, no pull-ups, no nothing. But that's required in order to climb and swing from things. So the training was super intense. And I was here doing that for 2012 to probably 2014, where I reached sort of a plateau. I was at a plateau in my training because I was good, but with the lifestyle here, where, as I told you, where you have to freelance and work multiple jobs in order to do this, I couldn't get better. I couldn't reach the level that I wanted to be, which is professional. And so he encouraged me to go to Circus School. And, but at the time I had a full-time personal training business, this is self-sustaining business that I ran. And I had to give that up in order to leave New York and dedicate my time to full-time circus training, which I did. And that was a great idea. At the time, it was really scary to sort of drop everything and kind of go in a new direction, but definitely worth it. And with the focused training where you're just all day, every day working on that skill set, I really got better, like very quickly. It was only 9 months, and I was there for about a year though, and it was in Vermont. And then that allowed me to audition for other things and get hired by a company. So that's when I moved to Colorado to work with frequent flyers in Boulder. But at that time, so I worked with the company for about a year, teaching and performing in the school. And I felt, well, it was very far away from my family, first of all. And secondly, because I never lived outside of New York other than going to Vermont for circus school and then to Colorado for the aerial dance company. And it was challenging. But I learned that I really wanted to create my own stuff, that I wanted to be in control of what I was doing, how I was doing it, when I was doing it, and find more opportunity. And so that led me back here. So, and I've been back here for about a year now.
Excellent. So I'd love to ask you, how did it make you feel when you, I guess, had that realization? And when did you have that realization as a dancer that you weren't going to make it? You weren't going to be selected because of your physique?
That was hard. That was hard to come to terms with. I mean, I feel like you always kind of know that in the back of your head. As a woman, you develop pretty early, in your teens, and you know who you are, but you have this idealistic view of if I'm good, I'm going to be able to prevail. I'm going to be able to get what I want. I'm going to be successful. And so, yeah, it's a reality check, I suppose. But
do you remember having that aha moment when you were like, I've got to get out because I'm not going to?
Yes, I definitely do. It was after college, actually. So it's interesting because in school, NYU was very modern dance. So it was not ballet at all like I had experienced for my whole childhood. And I just wanted something different. But even there, you're in school, you're in this environment that's so supportive, and everyone is connected. There's a community there. And so you just think, I'm going to succeed. It's going to be the same when I get out into the real world, but it isn't at all the same. So I had, out of school, been hired by a ballet company that I was working for as an apprentice, and for about a year. And then when I wasn't offered a new contract for more money as a full company member based on my physique, which was directly told to me, then I started to think, this is what it's going to be like, this is what it's going to be like. And I need to figure out my place and where I fit in this, and what is that going to be? And so that's where I kind of diverged in my search for what I was doing.
And did you see that happening to anyone else? The reason I ask is because I wonder how fit and healthy were these ballet dancers or these dancers? Was there eating disorders?
Oh yeah.
Was there
They're not
pressure?
too fit and
what
not too
did
healthy.
it all look like?
A lot of that, a lot of eating disorders, body dysmorphia, like issues with who you are and what you look like and if you're perfect or not. And that's something that, is unfortunate about the way the performing arts particularly works. There is just a certain standard that you have to fit. I would say, I think it just depends on who you are and how you're affected by that. Eating disorders, I mean, it never affected me, even though I'm telling you about my physique and knowing that I couldn't fit a certain standard. I mean, I would say when I was a kid doing it, or like as a young adult doing it, I really had a sort of complete, distorted view of what I looked like and who I was. And it was the fitness industry that really changed that for me, that I realized I'm strong and healthy and can do a lot, that it's like superhuman ability by comparison to most people. So I started to embrace that and be accepting of it, but other people, not necessarily. I mean, so that kind of stuck. I saw it a lot, and it's kind of tragic, I would say, and unfortunate. So either they stopped doing it because it was just becoming too emotional, or they continued to do it and live a certain lifestyle and accept it. And there is a lot of that. And I can't speak for any professional dance companies at this point because it's been a while since I've been involved in the dance world, but it exists. It still exists, and it's an unfortunate thing.
So moving out of the dance world into the trapeze world, how does that look like in terms of fitness and health?
It's definitely better, more accepting and embracing as far as I am concerned, and on my level. You have to be strong in order to lift your body weight and other people's body weight if you are doing that. And so you build a physique and you look a certain way, and that is embraced. And I find it to be more community oriented because in acrobatics or in circus, there's the skill set is very diverse. So, for example, if you're a dancer, you should be able to do ballet, modern, jazz, hip hop, tap, salsa, West African, ballroom. You should be able to translate and move from one to the other pretty easily. But as a circus performer, just because I'm an aerialist and I do trapeze doesn't mean I can juggle, right? So, which I'm working on, but doesn't mean you can juggle or doesn't mean you can tumble on the ground. If you're good at one thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be good at this other thing. So that's why you usually, unless you're born into the circus, I guess you usually pick one or two, maybe three disciplines that you're going to focus on and you're going to be really good at. And then you have the supplementary things, or you can be like a generalist in which you're capable of doing this thing if you're hired for a show where they want you to, like, say, do fabric for that part, but that's not your strongest thing. So I find it to be a little bit more like diverse in that way and embracing.
I'm also interested to hear both your parents were doctors and yet they were open for you to be a performer for the rest of your life, which obviously is not going to bring the same sort of income as a doctor. And that's amazing that they were like that. What sort of, reception did you get from friends and other family members in terms of this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? What sort of opinions or, expectations were on you?
Well, friends, anyone that was around me was pretty supportive. I would say that the hardest thing for me was school growing up, that being supportive or them being supportive. Not college, because I went for the arts, but if I'd stay late at dance or have a show and needed to study for a test or needed to wake up late for the next day for that, they weren't very supportive of that because it was getting in the way of my education, I suppose. But if I went to a public school, so maybe if I had decided to go to maybe an arts high school, that would have been different. But it was fine for me to work through that. And again, I think family was supportive and embracing when I was young. When I got older, everyone was still pretty supportive. I mean, like that, I guess that's not usual. I have a lot of friends that parents push them in a different direction or said they're never going to make it. It's not going to provide you a living. But if you are creative, I mean, besides just in what you do, how you do it, you can make a life for yourself. I think it's just the kind of person that you are in order. And honestly, having the support that I had makes it possible for me to be still doing this. Because I have plenty of friends that I went to college with who graduated with dance degrees that don't perform anymore because it's cutthroat, it's challenging. And as you said, it's not financially rewarding as other careers. And you get a lot of rejection and there's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with. But I think if you know that's what you want, then you continue to fight for that if that's what you want. And so that's why, I'm not going to say I don't question. I'm not going to say I don't question that because I do a lot. You'll go through moments of, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I pushing myself physically, mentally, emotionally, and working crazy hours in order to do this? I could just have a normal, I'm going to quote that, normal life, but that's not me. That's not me. I continue to do it because I love to do it and I want to.
I rarely meet people like yourself, as young as you, who say with such certainty that this is what they want. They want to be, they know what they want. And, when I met you, it's like, I know I want to be a performer. Even now, I still want to perform. It's quite amazing. But I must question you as well. All these, negative things, it sounds so hard. How do you know that you want to be a performer? Or more to the point, why do you want to be a performer? What is it that's so exhilarating for you about being a performer?
Okay. Well, personally, that's how I communicate, through my body, through my choreography, that's how I express myself. And it always has been. And I love doing it. When I'm on stage, I can be anything I want to be, a different person, the same person. It doesn't matter. I can express through any message, through storytelling, through intricate body movements, through rhythm, and really combine everything that I love and give it to other people, and share that with other people. And whether or not, I think I don't want to only present this in a negative light because I get so much joy out of doing this and doing what I'm doing. I really, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by music, by movement, by stories. Like I said, becoming something or being something outside myself, if that makes sense. And I feel like a lot of people, particularly as far as like communicating, are stifled and don't have this ability. And I don't even mean physically. I mean just the platform to express themselves in the way that they want to. And for me, that's always been very clear. It's hard to implement, though. It is really hard to do. So I'm sure that other people that don't continue to dance or don't continue to perform circus or whatever feel this way, feel that it's the way they express themselves, but want other things for themselves. And this is what I want. And it always has been. And so, I think I've talked to you about this before. Physically, it's very taxing. So I know that I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do this, but I know that I want to be involved no matter what for the rest of my life. So what does that mean? We'll see.
What do you think it might mean?
I want to create on myself and other people and produce art. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, as I was telling you, but I am looking for those opportunities.
And just seeing you perform, it's very inspirational. And I think I mentioned to you, my daughter thinks you're like a superhero. So I'm sure all our listeners can actually go and watch you on YouTube. We'll be putting it up there. So that's amazing. So just to, I guess, give our listeners a bit of an idea of what all this is, Chinese pole dancing and trapeze, how can our listeners get involved or even just get a taste of that? Have you got any sort of tips about what they could do?
To actually take classes or
take a class or even just try it and just give them a sense of what you feel when you perform?
Well, there's circus and dance everywhere. So if you look, you'll definitely find it. Aerial schools, dance schools, any type of training facility all over the country, all over the world. So maybe it's just not something that someone's looked for, but you have to if you're going to do this, and you don't have to be the best at what you do, it is a physical art form. So you need to be able to accept and embrace the pain. And I mean the physical pain at first. And doing anything that you're not used to doing, besides, I mean, even intellectually, learning something new is always challenging. And so you have to be willing to make mistakes and fall on your face and be okay with that. And, and then if you're going to move on from that, feel uninhibited. Like you can do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. And I would suggest that you go online and look up aerial dance or circus or dance classes in your neighborhood or in your city or wherever it is that you live and try.
And so for beginners, they have these classes?
Yep. They have beginner classes everywhere. Yeah.
You're not really talking them up, but I do want to give it a go. Yeah. It sounds painful, but...
No, I mean, it's just physical. And that's what I'm trying to say. You can do anything, and it is just something that you have to persevere, in other words, if you want to continue to take the classes. I think that it's accessible to anybody. And there are schools that give beginner classes, not just aerial dance, anything. So it's definitely possible. So I would do a search.
Once people start seeing the video, they'll be onto it. Listen, before I let you go, Amy, I've got to ask you a bit of a personal question. We ask all our guests on the show, and I know the answer because I can see it on your arm. Do you have a tattoo?
Oh, I have 3.
3. Okay, tell us about them.
I only got them later in my life, so I was initially nervous about that with my career because it's, again, a physical art form. But ultimately, I'll express what I want to express. The first one didn't have much thought to it. It's the arrow on my wrist, meaning I wanted to get one, and I wanted it to be as not as painful as it could possibly be. So 10 minutes on the arm, but it's become...
Show us that one. That's the arrow on the wrist.
Yeah, it's become meaningful to me over time. I had gotten it with a childhood friend who had a couple of tattoos, and I had been telling her for years I wanted to do it. So we went together and we chose this in about 30 seconds, looking online. But, an arrow for protection, going in the straight path, really, pursuing what I want. And every time I put my arm out, it's pointing in some direction. So I'll always know I have that direction. It doesn't matter. Where I'm going, but I know I'm going somewhere. On my arm, I have a swan. That it's a couple of things, but mostly my favorite ballet is Swan Lake, and something I danced a lot when I was a kid. And I really, I waited for some signs. I was in Prospect Park, and I saw a swan swimming by, and then I went to see Swan Lake with a friend. This is about a year ago now, and it was almost 15 years to the day that I had performed the same exact ballet as a teenager. And so it kind of influenced me to do that as well, and to get that done. And so, yeah. And these, I like to see it. But the other one I have on my rib cage, and that's a feather.
You're going to show us that one as well, or not today?
Another time.
And what's the feather resemble?
Lightness. Just light as a feather, to breathe, to kind of just take things one at a time, or take days one at a time, and just float through life. That's why I got it.
Awesome. On that note, thank you so much for coming on the show, Amy. That was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.